G'day, my name's Brendan Stemp and I'm a full-time woodturner. Welcome to my workshop in Mackenzie Creek, which is near Horsham, Western Victoria, Australia. The purpose of this video is to go through or show you my lacquering technique, or one of my finishing techniques that I use quite a lot with my wood turning. Now this is the lacquer that I use. It's made by Pylon, an Australian company. It's called high-tech clear semi-gloss nitrocellulose lacquer. Nitrocellulose, it's one pot. All that you need is in this pot itself. Now another essential item is the spray gun itself. This spray gun is about a $200 spray gun. It's all about how good the atomisation of the lacquer is, and the more expensive, the better the gun, the better the atomisation. This is a gravity feed gun as opposed to a suction feed, which I find quite handy as well. The adjustment here, which adjusts the width of the spray, and at the back here how much of the product or the lacquer actually comes out the spray gun. Another handy piece of equipment is this Lazy Susan. Obviously you can spin the work that you're spraying rather than having to move around the piece itself. I use these offcuts of timber to help elevate timber or pieces of work so that I can, for instance, put them up on there like so. Now obviously the solvents in the lacquer are not good for the health, so it's appropriate or necessary that you have an appropriate mask with appropriate filters. Look after your health. I use this mixing pot to mix the lacquer. What do I mix it with? Well, I mix the lacquer with the thinners. I use Pylon lacquer, therefore I use Pylon thinners. 1 litre of lacquer, 500 ml of thinners is how I mix it. Okay, now I've got a fairly simple shape to spray here. Often if you're learning how to spray, it's best to spray just a flat surface initially, and then you can go on to more complex shapes. This is, as I say, a flat surface, but we have got this edge around here that needs spraying. Now this is going to be a wall clock made out of a piece of red gum burl. Now the spray gun is set at about 30 psi. Somewhere between 20 and 40 psi is where I operate. Now I don't know exactly, because often I will adjust it at the gun rather than the regulator. Now I have thinned this down, as I said before. I've thinned this down, that is the lacquer 2 to 1, so 2 lacquer to 1 thinners, and it comes out of the gun quite well. The other thing I need to mention about the gun is the nozzle. This one's a 1.8mm nozzle, which is about the smallest you can go. 1.5 they say. I'd prefer 1.8, perhaps even a little bit bigger than that. The spray dries very quickly, so we've got to try and get the spray on as quickly as possible to avoid what we call overspray, where the spray falls onto stuff that you've already sprayed and creates a gritty sort of feel. So we've got to be careful about overspray. First thing I'm going to do is, I've got this on the Lazy Susan so I can rotate it, and what I'm going to do is spray around the edge initially, so let's go with that. I've got the nozzle on a broad spray, but I'm going to get in close. I'm going to get into about 6 to 8 inches away and spray fairly quickly. You'll notice that I'm moving the gun all the time, never settling on one spot, or else I'll create too much lacquer on that one spot and get a run happening. So here we go. Rotating the Lazy Susan all the time. Keep it moving, keep the gun moving. And I'm around back to the start. Next thing I'm going to do is the top surface. So here we go. Now I'm going to work from this across to the front. Or I'm always working away from me. So any spray I put on here, there will be a little bit of overspray that I then will pick up on my future passes over the timber. So here we go. So advancing about an inch with each spray. Now we'll move on to a bowl. Now a bowl presents us with some more vertical surfaces. In this case I've got a bowl made of sassafras sanded to 400 grit. I've got it on my Lazy Susan so I can move around quite easily. I've got it on my blocks. Now the blocks are going to do a couple of things. Number one, it'll help me lift the bowl off later on when it's wet, And number two, it's going to prevent any of the lacquer bleeding in underneath the edges if it was sitting on the table or this Lazy Susan itself. Now, the spray gun, I've got it set at about 30 psi, and I've also thinned the lacquers down even more. It's now about 50-50 lacquers to thinners. I'll start spraying, moving the Lazy Susan around all the time. It's important when applying the spray that the surface actually looks quite wet, and that's the way you know or can tell that you've applied enough lacquer to the surface. And we're going to give this about 5 minutes to become touch dry so that we can flip it over and spray the inside. It's touch dry, so I can easily remove the blocks, place the bowl on the Lazy Susan and getting ready to spray the inside of the bowl. There's a couple of things that we need to be aware of with spraying the inside. Number one, we've got even more vertical surfaces, so we've got to be extra careful with the amount of lacquer that we apply so that we don't get our runs. And the other thing, the gun I've dropped back to 20 psi. That way, when I spray into the bowl, I don't have the lacquer bouncing back into my face. It goes on the bowl, not elsewhere. So we'll get ready to spray and let's go. Now I typically apply 3 coats. I lightly sand between the first and second coats only. I clean the sanding dust away with a clean rag, and then I'm ready to apply a second coat. The problem with the second coat that you might face is actually being able to see the lacquer go on. I rely on a light source to help me see the lacquer go on. In this case it is the sun, and the sun is directly opposite me and I'll be able to see it go on nicely. Now I've finished spraying. It is touch dry, but remember it takes about 24 hours to fully harden. I do like the nitrocellulose lacquer. It's very quick, easy to apply. Most importantly for me, it hasn't got that plasticky look. It does come in a gloss. This is semi-gloss, also a satin. I also prefer the matte finish. Hope the video's been helpful. Happy spraying, and check out some more of my wood turning videos on my YouTube channel. See you later.